You're listening to the Strategic Foresight for Asia podcast. We break down the geostrategic forces shaping Pakistan and the region, delivering foresight and bringing expert analysis and practitioner insights on the trends and choices defining our future.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to another StrafAsia podcast. This is Faraz Haider, and I have with me Ameera Adil. She's a feminist climate activist based in the Philippines right now, or I'm not sure.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, my bad, Indonesia. And uh, for the most part, we're going to be talking about climate change, right? That's easier for people to understand, but not just climate change. Okay, there's erratic monsoons are happening or something, but the larger question of whether or not climate change is simply a system. Is it simply a symptom? Like, is it an output? Is it a disease? Or is there some larger system in the background at play? Okay, um, when a flood destroys a home, it's not it's not incomplete to say that it's the problem of the flood, right? सैलाब ज़्यादा आ रहे हैं, गर्मी ज़्यादा बढ़ रही है, but we need to start asking ourselves that why is it that that home was built on a floodplain? Why did someone allow construction over there? Why did someone allow construction of houses that trap heat in a climate in a country where historically you know what the temperature is going to be like? So climate change as a symptom of a system, right? So so let's start to unpack that. I mean, let's just get right into the first thing. कि what do we mean कि हम ये कह रहे हैं कि ये symptom है of a system? So what do we mean? मतलब what do we mean कि it's a symptom? क्या मतलब?
I think that there is a larger system at play that allows a multitude of the aspects of polycrisis जो आज है हमारे पास to occur, right? So whether you have capitalism or colonialism or intensive resource extraction, mineral extraction, all of these things, hyper consumerism, anything that we, even patriarchy, anything that we see as like a crisis today, ultimately can be linked back to the system that allows it, because हमने एक system ऐसा create कर दिया है where it, instead of the circular system of nature, we have a linear system that is anthropocentric and centered on humans and consumption and production and consumption and then waste. Because if you think about it, there's no such thing as waste in nature. कोई भी चीज़ ऐसी नहीं होती जो कि कभी degrade ना हो, और अगर होती भी है तो it's not something that actually harms the environment or harms the planetary boundaries that we exist in. And human beings pretty much are also like creatures that exist within the confines of an ecological sphere, right? We cannot exist without it, without the oxygen, without the food that we eat, without the plants that exist. हम उसके beyond exist कर नहीं सकते. Even if we have like a lab grown environment altogether and we start creating lab grown meat and things like that, you would still need the ingredients from the world that we exist in. And so essentially, when we've established a system, however many years ago, where we have separated ourselves from nature, I think that is the initial issue that we have, और उसी के सारे symptoms as a polycrisis अभी दुनिया में introduce हो रहे हैं.
Right. So okay, I see. But I'd want to follow up on कि इस system को फिर then we should elaborate a little for clarity. But before that, कि why? क्योंकि अभी तक ज्यादातर जो बात होती है it is कि carbon emissions ज्यादा हो रही हैं. किस तरह की threats and I'm included in that. A lot of my own research and work has been very focused on sort of threat assessments. Okay, climate change is happening, average temperatures are increasing, flood frequencies and severities are increasing, and then resultantly उससे क्या threats हैं, क्या risks हैं. So why does it matter, or what's the impact of between the angles of these two debates? Okay, whether we are focusing on the system, and we'll elaborate on the system a bit later, or if we just focus on कि carbon emissions इतनी है, temperatures इतने high हो रहे हैं, ये इससे threat हो रही है. So in those types of strands of discussion के बीच में, why does it matter that we take this other angle? Why should we look at it systematically?
I think because there's a great TED talk, Olivia Lazard ki, on the blind spots of the green energy transition. And a lot of the times we celebrate the renewable energy transition that we have, and even we call it like a just energy transition. And it is more just than the fossil fuel based energy system that we have currently, but it also has its blind spots, in the sense that we know that चाहे जहाँ भी mineral आपकी extraction हो रही है, the majority of production is done in China. And so when one country has the monopoly over these mineral extractions, and also we still have this culture of consumption and overconsumption and hyper consumerism, more is more wala sara concept. So it's not going to be enough no matter how much we produce. वो production kabhi stop nahi hogi because everything is growth oriented. So essentially, even if we move away from fossil fuels and you do not change the system that we exist in, the renewable energy transition is in itself going to become the next problem. And we're seeing that already in places like Congo, jahan aapka genocide ho raha hai because of these mineral extraction practices that are happening, that are disregarding the people and the planetary boundaries that exist in that region. And that's why it's important to look at it systematically, because if we don't, we are going to end up creating another crisis, or walking into another crisis, even if we solve this one.
So then what we're sort of saying, okay, while it's a better alternative, it doesn't really fix the problem, because you may get a BYD at 03, but then after 3 years you may want to switch your car. So then ab us gaadi ka kya hoga, right? So with that excessive consumerism is the actual problem. The BYD will continue to have to make more cars. वो new batteries भी उसको बनानी होंगी, उसके लिए वो और extract करता रहेगा. So it's that on a societal level, the excessive consumerism, to which then the system responds and exploits the smaller countries, वहाँ से चीज़ों को निकालने and all of these. That's actually quite interesting.
But Faraz, I wouldn't even say that it's hyper-consumerism at the end of the day. I think that it's consumerism is also like one of those symptomatic things जिसपे हम लोगों के ऊपर push कर देते हैं ना, एक practice के या human nature के ऊपर push कर देते हैं blame. But हमारी core values इस वक्त are profit, right? Because we've associated money with survival, and hence like producing money or producing profit is the ultimate goal for humanity right now. And when your system is designed as such, so obviously consumerism is going to be the natural outcome, because more is more. Aapki profit, if you're going to focus on profit, you're going to focus on excessive production to maintain that profit, and it's not going to matter कि वो production useful है या needful है कि नहीं है. Yeah. So and there's this study by Dr. Jason Hickel as well, right? Abhi recently, I think in 2024, he released it that you only need 30% of the current resource consumption in the world to provide decent living standards to 8.5 billion people. So we're producing 70% excess in all production, and we do not need that to provide decent living standards to all the people in the world.
And yet still most of the people do not have decent living standards.
Exactly. So then the problem is not production or consumption at all. It's about the system that allows accumulation of wealth because of the accumulation of power.
But I think just not both are at play at the same time, because the human want for consuming ends up, because it's the humans who built the system. There's no one from Mars that came in and built the system. We built the system, and then so it's sort of like I feel as though it's that snake eating itself. Okay, there's a want in the people for having more and more and more. This never-ending well of whether it's wanting more profit or whether it's wanting more things, and that one उसकी एक शक्ल कंज्यूमरिज्म की उसमें निकलती है, एंड दूसरी शक्ल उसकी मेकिंग मोर एंड मोर प्रॉफिट में निकलती है, एंड देन बोथ वर्क एट द सेम टाइम, sort of in a demand and supply parallel, where some people with more powers try to create that system and benefit off of it, and then the others simply just consume. Because, for instance, if the people's want for consumption wasn't there, the system may have fizzled out after some time.
But then I would ask you, so we've existed for more than 300,000 years as a species, and arguably we used to have bigger, better brains back then, like maybe 10,000 years ago, because of the sheer amount of knowledge that we had to store as a singular person, knowing which plants to eat, which animals to hunt, and where to go, kaun si location, kaun si direction, and everything. So all of that was a lot more information to store in our brains than
Hmm.
we do now. So arguably, we were a little bit smarter back then. And then 10,000 years ago, you had the transition to agriculture, which created this concept of inheritance and owning the land, because now you were
Hmm.
growing food on the land and you owned that food, so you owned the land. उससे पहले land ownership का इतना ज़्यादा concept नहीं था. People were like nomadic in nature, and we see that in a lot of indigenous societies even today, and even like 400 years ago, Japan, North America was entirely
Hmm.
indigenous, South America as well. So I think that this has been a manufactured change in human behavior, and one that is very, very recent, less than 3% of our entire timeline of existence. And I also think
Hmm.
that it came about because of an insecurity that was instilled in us when we started owning the land. आपकी एक hierarchy create होनी शुरू हो गई. And when one person became more powerful and more important or better than another person, that created this sense of dehumanization, which also created this
Hmm.
installation of perfectionism within us as parents to our children, because you have to be the best in society to get to that top, because everybody is now trying to get to the top of the hierarchy. That's the entire goal of our society now. But
Hmm.
if
We
there
we just
wasn't any resource,
we just don't. मतलब we moved away from just exist, live, be a good person, and that's it. Like nahi, like it needs to be highly. We need to be the best at everything. अच्छा, I want to go back to के जो हमने system को describe करना था, क्योंकि we're saying system
yeah,
will sound a bit weird. But so like जो हम से system के, so what is this system? Is it the materialism? Is it the consumerism? Is it capitalism? Which ism is it? Like what is the system that we specifically are referring to कि जिसकी वजह से या जिसका symptom climate change है या climate
I
change
would.
को जिस तरीके से हम बात कर रहे हैं कि जिसका ये थ्रेट है इसका ये नुकसान है सो व्हाट इज दैट सिस्टम क्रिएटिंग दिस सिम्टम
But if you want to go like really far back to the core of it, for me, that it's patriarchy. Like especially in
राइट
feminist ontologies and epistemologies, it is patriarchy, because अगर आप उस philosophical sense में देखते हो कि
just
वो
one thing
hierarchy,
just to
yeah,
clarify for anyone who is not wanting to do PhD research ontology and epistemology is ontology what जिंदगी की असलियत क्या है and epistemology उस असलियत तक उसको हम ढूंढ कैसे सकते हैं किस तरीके से ढूंढना चाहिए right so अब आगे
sorry, उस उसी speak में इस वक्त मैं हूँ.
yeah yeah
But yeah, so patriarchy, and not in the sense of like just men ruling women. Patriarchy is this hierarchical system, the system that enforces power and hierarchical structures. And मतलब क्लैरिटी के लिए हम ये भी कहते हैं ना कि अगर चलो सारी औरतें भी रूल कर रही होती हैं, it's not like the world is going to be a better place. It's not going to be a better place because we still have patriarchal structures that women
mm,
also propagate. So आपका structure patriarchal है, which imposes hierarchies and power
right
over like one person over the other, and that is the essential dehumanization, essential thing that allows dehumanization. If you think about it, like, you know, you need a certain mindset to accept slavery, something like the transatlantic slave trade. You need
mm,
to think that you are better as a human
right
being than another person
mm,
to be able to do that. And then that still exists in like the men women divide, right? You have to think that you are a better human being than a woman to be able to inflict that pain onto other people, right? So that it
mm.
applies for everyone who has patriarchal mindsets. And that is what we see in society today.
Right. So then the hierarchical and patriarchal structures, matlab a system where कि जहाँ पे some people have the authority above everyone else, or they feel that they are above everyone else, and they can do what they want without repercussion. So
Yeah.
that those structures माशरे में निज़ाम में दुनिया के निज़ाम में is what creates then all the other little isms which we see, okay,
Yeah.
that then result in this kind of threat that we view climate change with. Okay,
Yeah. I wouldn't say that they create them, but the patriarchy allows it. Like, it makes space for capitalism to exist. It makes space for slavery to exist. It makes space for the mindset that a profit should exist no matter what to exist. The infinite growth model, everything. It creates it gives you the mindset that makes everything else possible. The small
so it
distinction of
facilitates it or enables it,
yeah.
kind of. I
Yeah,
see.
because a circular model versus a triangular model, triangle mein the top is very small, right? You need to
Hmm.
reach the top. वो एक triangular एक hierarchy बन जाती है, and then it creates that competition that you need to be at the top. In a circular model, you know that everyone has their place, and everyone has their function, and no function is greater than another function. All functions are interconnected, as it is in nature, and as
I
it
see.
is in like human society as well, but we don't recognize that.
Right. I see. That's very interesting. I was thinking you would go straight in. You would just say, "Kenny, it's capitalism causing this," but it's a very interesting take. It's those patriarchal structures that facilitate or enable all the other isms to take shape and then exploit everything and create all these problems. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. Asha, let's get into Pakistan. Right. Okay. क्योंकि I want us to be able to highlight क्योंकि my larger goal is that we can identify certain things that the people watching can then work on afterwards क्योंकि a lot of the
Mhm.
climate change research and topics and discussions, if you go on LinkedIn, it's very much the same. There's very few people, you can probably count them on your fingertips, who are diving into the discussion of कि it's a governance problem, governance चीज़ों को ठीक करना है, and not just like not just more funds for disaster relief or something. Like, we need a very different approach. So I want us to be able to identify the specific things in Pakistan that are creating this climate crisis in the way that we're experiencing it. So specifically, if you had to pick out certain practices or approaches or methods or कोट एंड कोट सिस्टम्स इन पाकिस्तान कि जो कि जिसकी वजह से क्लाइमेट चेंज जिस नौयत में या जिस शिद्दत में हमें डील करना पड़ता है या उसके नुकसानात को झेलना पड़ता है, वो ऐसी क्या चीज़ें हैं, गवर्नेंस के ऐसे कौन से स्पेसिफिक एस्पेक्ट्स हैं कि that we should be focusing on more as opposed to the amount of water that's going to flow into the Indus Basin, or the amount of homes that will get destroyed. या कि 2 हफ्ते पहले नोटिफिकेशन भेजे एनडीए में या 1 हफ्ता पहले, like those are very trivial and tactical level things ना. तो वो गवर्नेंस की कौन सी चीजें हैं कि जिस पे हमें फोकस करना चाहिए?
आई थिंक गवर्नेंस पे तो नहीं फोकस हो सकता जब तक कि हमारे पास डेमोक्रेसी ना हो, एंड एट अ वेरी लोकल लेवल एज वेल. एंड ऑल्टरनेटिवली आई हैव नाउ बिन इनकरेजिंग पीपल टू बिल्ड कम्युनिटी. हमारा जो नेबरहुड वाला सिस्टम पहले होता था, लाइक माई फादर्स फ्रॉम क्वेटा एंड लाइक हिज फादर्स फ्रॉम क्वेटा, तो वो लोग बताते होते थे अबाउट दिस नेबरहुड. आपकी क्या कहते हैं उसको, नेबरहुड को क्या कहते हैं उर्दू में?
मोहल्ला.
गली मोहल्ले के जो आपस में होता था ना, तो दे यूज्ड टू टॉक अबाउट दैट, एंड इट वाज वेरी अनरिलेटेबल टू मी एज समवन हु ग्रू अप इन इस्लामाबाद. And I think that essentially is what is going to fix everything in the end. Because आपकी communities bonds जब strengthen होते हैं, you are able to stand up for each other's oppression. कि कोई एक बंदा भी जो है उधर oppress हो रहा है तो आपकी community आपके साथ है. अगर कोई एक बंदा भी भूखा है तो आपकी community आपके साथ है. तो that community strengthens leadership then, and that उस community के अंदर से spokespeople निकलते हैं. Those spokespeople then take local government seriously, then that local government takes provincial government seriously, and then it leads to federal government. So I think everything ultimately starts with मोहल्लादारी and बिरादरी के आप अपने साथ का जो इंसान है, आपका नेबर जो है, उसका खाना पीना सही है, उसके पास पानी है, उसके पास एयर कंडीशनिंग है या पंखा है. बट हमारी लिमिटेशन यहाँ आ जाती है बीइंग इन इस्लामाबाद इज दैट इट इज अ वेरी स्ट्रैटिफाइड सोसाइटी, राइट? यू हैव सिवियर वेल्थ इनइक्वालिटी, एंड जब तक कि हम एक अफ़गान इमिग्रेंट को भी एक इंसान के तौर पे नहीं देखेंगे, या अपने पार्लर वाली को इंसान के तौर पे नहीं देखेंगे, या अपनी मेड को एक इंसान के तौर पे नहीं देखेंगे. तो we're never going to get out of that, because I think on some level there is internalized shame about all of these things in us. Yes, we exist in this system, but this is not a healthy way to exist, seeing someone else in so much suffering and pain and oppression, and then just like turning a blind eye and be like, ye mera masla nahi ho sakta, and then focusing on your other neighbors. It just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to your soul spiritually. So I think that we need to heal ourselves on a community level and just care about each other. Jaise आप खुद imagine करो कि like if your neighbor was to come knocking on your door right now with like some extra tomatoes that grew in their garden, like that would make you immediately conducive to that community member कि मतलब अब फिर वो कोई उसके against कुछ होता है तो you would be like नहीं यार ये तो बंदा बहुत अच्छा है, इसने तो ऐसे नहीं किया. तो वो जब वो वाली defense आ जाएगा in communities, that is when we'll be able to progress on other governance levels, I think.
Right, I see. So, matlab, so then, I mean, क्योंकि फिर it's hard to actually, I mean, just within this session alone, we need another discussion on this. Okay, then at this societal and communal level, what steps do we take to get to that output? क्योंकि फिर इस level पे a lot of the other woes of Pakistan are probably a lot of the other even security problems of Pakistan stem from this. Like for instance, खैर उसमें अभी नहीं जाते. So I think instead of then we should there needs to be a reframing of the climate change debate. It's not climate vulnerability. It's maybe not even governance vulnerability. Governance is the output of human interactions within institutions, right? So it's either a communal vulnerability or weakening. Yeah, societal level. The community is a smaller group, so it may be easier to actually manage and do case studies on. Is ऐसे कर सकते. Society then becomes too large of a scope for that. So communal weakness, I guess, and then the things we would need to do is actually introspection. And some people may think, okay, climate change ki solution, how can it start from communal or just societal introspection? Lekin I think if you followed along with the argument that ये जो इस podcast में हमने की है कि working at that level, yes, it may be a very long term approach to things, like it may take 30 years or something. But if we do start working at that level, then the climate change threats or those problems, as well as many other problems, we could actually try to address all of those.
But see, Faraz, like I don't think कि हम लोग जो है जो हमारा poly crisis है, and also the influx of information that we have about different global crises, उससे हम सही तरह से frame नहीं कर पाते अपने our place in all of it, right? Because this is not something that we're doing for ourselves. We're doing this for our children and our children's children and any other children of the world that are going to come. हम अपने future के लिए नहीं कर रहे. And so this requires a certain dissociation of like ये solution है या ये solution होना चाहिए, ये outcome है. Like we need to dissociate ourselves from the outcome and just do the things that are needed to be done. Like just a proverb tha ke an old man doesn't plant a tree for himself. He's not going to live to see that tree. So it's kind of like that situation. We do need to dissociate ourselves from the outcome. And honestly, like, yes, to some people this might seem like a very simplistic and woo-woo sort of thing, but just growing your own food is so significant right now in this global political landscape, because आपका क्या था Strait of Hormuz जब close हुआ था, तो most of your world's fertilizer trade goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And when that fertilizer did not reach the right farms at the right times, those people were not able to fertilize or grow their crops properly. We're not going to see this impact right now. We're going to see this impact maybe in the winter, maybe next year, when food prices go up. And so if you are growing your own food and you have excess to share with your community, then maybe you can set up a barter system or give to the ones that do not have food and strengthen their even political positioning or their ability to survive. And like that,
they would be able to absorb those shocks, na? मतलब जो मार्केट की वॉलेटिलिटी है, इन्फ्लेशन की, आप उसको अवॉइड कर सकोगे. बट देन दिस अगेन हम डिट्रैक्ट हो जाएगा. But like for instance, then we need to start discussing how urban construction is a problem. For instance, very few and being able to like I'm talking in the context of Rawalpindi and Islamabad, and then also probably Lahore, Karachi, all the major metropolitan cities in Pakistan. But the ability to grow your own food within your own premises is reserved for people maybe living in either they have to live outside the city in their own like वो अपने मतलब गांव शाव के इलाके में, या फिर शहर के अंदर तो जिनके बहुत बड़े घर हैं और उन्होंने आधे कनाल के अपने गार्डन का एरिया भी रखा हुआ है, वो शायद कर सकें. और समवन हु इज वेरी फॉरवर्ड थिंकिंग एंड हु हैज अ रूफटॉप गार्डन, लेकिन उस रूफटॉप गार्डन बनाने के लिए भी आपका कुछ 7-8 करोड़ वाला घर होगा जिस पे आपने आर्किटेक्चर डिजाइन कर दो तब वो से. तो फिर देन देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ इंटरकनेक्टेड प्रॉब्लम्स ना, कि वी हैव लाइक सिटी प्लानिंग, टाउन प्लानिंग, उसके मसले हैं कि like these solutions would become very difficult and you'd have to, I don't know, find very creative ways to be able to do that. But the logic of it's very true. Like, if you are growing your own food, तो आपने खुद तो अपने आप को price shock से बचा ही लिया. And then if there's excess, I mean, how many tomatoes do you really need? Not that many, right? So then
खराब हो जाता है.
तो other ones you can give to those people, maybe the people working at your home, maybe your neighbor. तो वो भी उन price shock से बच जाएंगे. So the logic is very solid. I'd agree, and I think I'd have to switch my climate security topics to a fair extent. But nee, this was very fun, and I think this should be part of a series of where we discuss these things. So this is essentially critical lens की theoretical viewpoint से ये बात हो रही है. Feminist theories are also from the critical lens of theories. तो this should be a ongoing एक सिलसिला होना चाहिए कि जिसमें हम इस perspective से, not this exact topic per se, it doesn't have to be climate change, but sort of a critical cafe, and we just discuss a lot of these things.
Because
That
I
would be a good one.
also have a lot of contention with how feminist theories are so anthropocentric when it comes to Pakistan and India.
What do you mean? As in what, anthropocentric?
So ecofeminism is the concept के आपका जो global या planetary feminine traits हैं, those are being suppressed, and whether that's women or whether that's animal agriculture or milk production through cows or chickens that are laying eggs, everything runs on the female reproduction cycle, and
Right.
sustenance runs on feminine production. But that entire feminine production, femininity itself is being oppressed. So ecofeminism is this way of not just valuing women and including women in the conversation, but including planetary boundaries in the conversation and natural boundaries and natural sort of systems in the conversation. It's not just about women, it's about how we can all function together in a more harmonious, healthy way. And jo feminist discussions, and especially feminist foreign policy ki discussions that I've read so far in India and Pakistan are super anthropocentric. They only focus on human women and the human aspect
I see.
of femininity. Whereas, जैसे मैंने पहले कहा था, even if you include more women into security per se, that is not going to fix our problems of security because we're still going to be viewing it from the same lens of patriarchy.
Right. I see. This was a very fun discussion. I think there's a lot of mental thoughts for these things that we should continue talking about in the future. So we will do that. We should do that. But for now, thank you for listening. Thank you, Ameera, for giving us your time. And inshallah, see you in another series.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.